Hello, everyone. You may not know this, but I'm Dale Matthews. This is Inside News, and here is Mike Jones as well. Hello, Mike. Is that really you?
Yes, it is me, and I am here yet again. We we're a little off schedule just due to technical issues, but here we are in all of our glory.
Yes, it's glorious. Now, so last night we read to you. Oh, what a treat for you. We read to you the one and only copy out there. As far as I know, I don't think anybody else had it. Hasn't been in the Courier. Certainly hasn't been on KJO. Woohoo! Of the new ballot measure the commissioners wish to put out to the public, and some of the insidious parts of it. We have also posted this in a couple places, and if you send us an email at the following address, we will be happy to send to you a printable and readable, both, copy of this. And here's that email. Right.
Bad County at cpros.com.
Yes. So send us an email, and we will send you your very own copy suitable for framing of that awful idea that they're having. Yeah, and as I point out in the write-up to it, the idea that we're protected by the charter has been shot down quite thoroughly by Wally Hicks, who said this charter is not the protection that people think it has. You may recall that I said before on the show that if you take the charter, according to Wally Hicks and his definition, and you hold the charter, the piece of paper, over your head, you are protected somewhat from the rain. That's about it, according to Wally Hicks, because in the past, the county commissioners have gone to court with the county fighting against the county. I mean, the commissioners against the commissioners, and guess who won? And they've had things overturned that have been put into the county charter by the citizens, by a lot of effort, somewhat similar to the Grants Pass City Council says, oh, we can revoke your vote anytime. That's Mark Bartholomew. I think they were shocked that Mark revealed this secret. Nobody knew. I didn't know that. Mike knew it, but he wasn't telling anybody. And so,
right.
Is it possible that this could happen? It's happened in the past. And keep in mind, before Mike goes into the next little part here, that if these two commissioners are not elected, it's only going to take two. Because even if Simon says, no, I don't like this, even if all of us say I don't like this, how much help was that on the voters pamphlet? That Cheryl didn't want one. Or if Simon had said, well, what if the citizens come in with $10,000, which is much more than, oh, no, we're not going to have that. No way, says Keith Heck. Don't leave him out of this party. And so, Cheryl, we know that they've been pressing on the state about about how everything's an emergency here. It's really an emergency. When are you going to call this an emergency? Simon Hare's been saying, when are we going to pull the trigger? Gee, this might be a good time to pull the trigger. That's not an exact quote, okay, but dang close. Pulling the trigger is against our head. And so are they going to declare, if you've got two commissioners who have no hope, they're on their way out. They don't even make it through the primary process. What poison pill would they leave behind? Because they've already tried a couple of them. What poison pill would they leave behind? Now, we've got a viewer that sent a very thoughtful email to Mike, and tell us what that thoughtful viewer said, Mike.
Well, and I'll just summarize, and we can go into greater detail later, but the gist of it is that we don't need to worry about the state imposing an income tax here, because that won't be happening. But they do apparently have the right to impose a property tax on us. And so when they do come in and whatever it is that they impose upon us, you can rest assured that an increase in your property taxes is going to come along with that. And we'll get into greater detail later when I have a chance to digest all of the information and links that came with that letter, with that message.
I just would say to our viewers, just try to keep in mind that when people get a little older, it takes them a little longer to digest everything. And so, what?
Yes, I recommend probiotics.
I recommend some proactive action in encouraging the commissioners to look. I just can't get away from the idea that they're desperate. The city council is desperate. Cheryl Walker is sure that she's right. They all think that we're idiots. We're not following our instructions and voting the way they tell us to. And I do not put it behind them that they would say, okay, we're going to have to do this. This is for your own good. I'm your grandmother, she says, and I know what's good for you. And therefore, you know, here,
right.
Drink this cod liver oil.
Yes. No, that's
so the parents get home and you're covered with petroleum jelly and throwing up cod liver oil because grandma thinks that's best for you.
That's it.
Petroleum
that is
jelly.
What's happening here.
Wow, petroleum jelly. That's probably what's wrong with most of us. We were with petroleum when we were children.
You just came in shocked and amazed that you yourself had said petroleum jelly. That's pretty.
Brother.
Wow. Like, I heard somebody say petroleum jelly. That is outrageous.
All right. So, look, we know we can be deadly dull. No, that's not what I'm thinking. We can be deadly serious sometimes, and we sure were last night. And it is, this monitor is bouncing again. I got to fix that one of these days. But we also, but it does remind you, well, you wouldn't know because you're all too young for this, but there was a radio show back in the 30s where there was a guy who was saying, I got to fix that one of these days. I don't know, maybe you've heard about that. Anyway, and if you're old enough to know that show because you heard it live, you're probably going,
a second.
What?
Hey, yeah, no, I doubt many people that heard it live are listening to this program, although I could be wrong. I listened to a lot of old time radio when I was young because my father wouldn't allow me to watch TV.
Why so
I'm hip to a lot of
internet TV?
Yes, and so you know, I heard a lot of these. This wouldn't be, and you know, it's been many, many years, but is that a Fibber McGee and Molly reference there?
It is that. Yes, it is. Now, why do I know this? I don't know. It's part of my growth, and I listen. Yeah, I couldn't have listened to it live. Maybe I've absorbed it. It's a past life. Yes, I'm really a World War II.
You know what? Luckily, I think this is lucky for me that because otherwise I wouldn't have had anything to entertain myself with in the evenings back when I was a young man. And the local radio station KSFO had old time radio shows from 7 to 10 p.m. And that was just fantastic for me because, you know, theater of the mind, you know, and so
yeah, I may listen to that same thing on the same radio station, KSFO. Yes,
yeah,
I was a guest DJ on there once when I was in college. Well, anyway.
Oh wow.
Well, this is fascinating for our listeners. Aren't you glad you tuned in? Now, look, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. We try to lighten things up just a little bit, even in these dark times. This is a dark time because we're being run by crazy people, and they think that we're crazy, and so anything that they do is totally justified. Okay, we're going to encourage you to come on Wednesday to the weekly business session. We encourage you to come. And I'm going to put out a call to all the candidates for everything. Please get together with some of us who've decided to do this. We need them all. And we'd like you to sign a letter that we're going to send to the governor saying, Governor, we're the people, a couple of us, are going to, a couple of you guys, okay, not me, whatever you like, okay, self-effacing humor. We do not think this is a good idea. Please don't listen to these commissioners that are on their way out. This is a poison pill. It doesn't have to say that, but please, would you listen to the rest of us? We're going to be the new leaders. We don't want this. None of the population wants this. And the reason these guys are leaving is because they don't understand our population. Please don't listen to them, Governor. And they're all they've all been found guilty of ethics violations. You care about that kind of stuff. You cared about the previous governor, and that's what put you in office, right, Governor? So please don't listen to these guys that have got no stake in our future.
Yeah, I believe that's the only good lever that we have is the reference back to ethics problems. And don't you want to get away from ethics problems, Governor? Because I'll tell you, in terms of this governor's ideology, she would be just as bad as Walker, maybe worse.
Yeah, it's avoiding and who do we have to thank? Mike Jones. Who do we have to thank for filing that ethics complaint for like the 10th time, and finally it sticks? Gee, who would that be? There's your hint, buddy. Okay, so on to the rest of self-effacing humor. I mean, self-aggrandizing humor. So there we were at the weekly business session, and somebody got up and talked about marijuana. Go figure. How is that possible? So what we're going to do now is we're going to let you hear what they have to say. Don't turn off, turn on, tune in, drop out, stand by.
My name is Dr. Christine Parala Gardner. I run an alpaca farm in Cave Junction, and I serve on your Rural Planning Commission. And I speak to you today as a small farmer from Cave Junction, who I think I may be the only person in the county who has the distinction of being both a marijuana grower and a meat producer. Maybe there's one or two more of us, but we're very proud of producing meat on our alpaca farm. Our packing is done, of course, with tailors. But just to give you some sense, I would like to speak to you on behalf of the cannabis farmers of the Illinois Valley, who have met together astonishing degree of consensus.
Astonishing.
Consensus among people who consider this county their home. I had the privilege to go to the OHA hearing in Salem yesterday with a number of farmers from Southern Oregon. And we were astounded at the degree of change in the text coming out of OHA regarding cannabis production rules from last week to this week. The change is amazing.
Amazing.
What that showed me is that even the state is really trying to sort out how is this going to work. All
right, I'll lay off.
The magnitude of change we're living through right now is really quite spectacular. I can tell you, for example,
can't help it.
Spectacular.
That
Stop it.
Water rights regulations are not enforceable by March 1st because they can only process about 100 applications a month.
That's important.
And there would be more than 10,000 of them. That sort of thing. So I think on behalf of the farmers of the Illinois Valley, I'd like to say that we aspire to help our community. We love our community very much, and we want to see it better. We believe we're on the threshold of a great deal of prosperity, and together we can achieve an economy that actually serves the people of this poor rural county. The 9th poorest county in the nation. Now is the end of prohibition. We are on a tremendous threshold of well-being. As farmers, we seek to be good neighbors. We promise you we will use water wisely. You will be pleased at how thrifty this crop is and how little impact it can make. But we need your help. We need you to support Oregon State University Extension. Invite them to come to Josephine County. For example, why not teach drip irrigation in Josephine County? There's currently a tiny little opportunity to do that. We could make it readily available information. We could teach farmers about caring for their soils. Nobody's going to use pesticides. We don't want to poison our medicine. It's for patients. excuse me, if I may just finish my thought. I want us to think together to keep the needs of the patients in mind and to keep the needs of small family farmers in mind. And with these few elements, we promise to be good neighbors. Thank you.
Well, Keith,
boy, I mean,
thought. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff to deal with in that.
Well, besides the superlatives were a bit over the top. Okay, but go ahead, Mike. Give it a shot.
Yeah, well, the astonishing consensus. Perhaps she should have a discussion with Herman Bertschiger about consensus, and
that's pretty good.
Or now. This is not about medicine anymore. For the most part, I think most people realize that further down the road, I mean, the recreational sales are going to completely dwarf the medical sales. The only reason that people will go with the medical card aspect of this in the future is discount.
It's also really a good sales point. It's a good political push to say it's about medicine. Mm-hmm. Well, it is about medicine, but right. 3/4 of it's going to be about recreation. Okay.
Yeah, at least, if not more. How about pot growers learn about drip irrigation on their own? Instead of having some sort of a government-sponsored drip irrigation seminar or something.
Oh, Mike, don't you understand? There's an incredibly small window of opportunity. It's just so tiny. It's a tiny window of opportunity to get in there and do this. I don't understand that either. I get the idea that, and we do pay for these things. We pay to have people who are advisors about this, whether we should or not, we do. And so having somebody come in from the agricultural whatever bureau and tell people about drip irrigation, hey, it worked on Green Acres.
I didn't realize they were using drip irrigation back then. I guess. Well,
he was growing marijuana. Didn't you know what he was actually growing? Those little tiny marijuana plants.
Okay. All right.
That's why it was a show watched by many people in an altered state of mind.
Yes. Well, and that may well have been the case. No question.
People would say, hey, that pig that talks? He talks? Sure he does. Don't you ever watch the show? Brother, no, not that way. I don't watch the show.
Yes, I don't. I have no idea what you're talking about now. But in any event, I spoke to that woman after the thing there, and I asked her about her, because she was wearing. My wife is really, really into crochet, and so when I see somebody wearing elaborately crocheted stuff, I ask them about it and talk to them because I find it, mildly
fascinating, incredibly fascinating.
No, I notice it because I see all the different stuff my wife does. And anyway, and all of her stuff is made from alpaca, and which was very, very soft. And it's intriguing stuff. As yarn, it would probably be very, very expensive, but that's really all I have to say about that.
Well, now you see, we don't always have to be hard-hitting like last night. We don't always have to be downers. You don't have to watch the show and cry. You can watch the show and laugh. Look, they're making jokes about pigs. Oh, that's great.
Yes.
Okay. I meant about the movie, not about people who crochet. So
I know not what you're referring to.
Arnold's. Never mind. They know. You guys know. You all know. Call Mike. Send an email to Mike. Mike, don't you know about Arnold the Pig? He can even Google that. Okay. All right.
Wow.
What a fascinating show that was. Probably better.
See how benefited I have been from not growing up on television.
Sure, he probably didn't get to watch a moon landing either. Okay, so all right, great. No Arnold the Pig, no moon landing, nothing. So just so that
I did see the moon landing, and I saw it live, by the way.
Well, I was there, by the way. Who do you think was holding the camera? Yeah.
Okay.
How'd they get that camera footage? How did they get it, Mike? Somebody had to be there first. They said they were first step on the moon. Well, somebody had to hold the camera while they were there. Little known secret. All right, so I don't want you to think that we're only presenting one side, because Mark Seligman's coming up and he'll be generally on the same side. But tucked in between these two is somebody else who doesn't like this whole idea and is going to be very clear to you why it's just terrible. So, see, we're presenting everything to you. This is not the funny part of the show, but you'll see for yourself that it's we're trying to be balanced. Here we go. Trying to be balanced. Take it away, Stu Sinnott.
Stuart Sinnott, Grants Pass.
Thank you.
After watching a couple of commissioners' meetings, I would like to offer a suggestion to the board about something that would make you gain trust with the public. We have these open sessions here where we're able to speak, and after we speak, we hear your comments. I'm suggesting that you open up the floor after you give your comments to what we've said and let us have a back and forth with you, because I think in opening up that floor and allowing more speech from the public, you would gain their trust, and it wouldn't be quite as protected as you are now, because really and truthfully, you can be playing tic-tac-toe behind your board here. Nobody would see you. You don't even have to listen to us and just let us talk and ramble on. But if you're showing the public that you're hearing them, you're responding to them, and you're taking into advisement what they come here out of their busy days to testify about, I think it would go a long way towards building that kind of rapport that you'd like to see with the public.
Don't hold your breath, Stuart.
And the other thing I'd like to talk about, I think it's a travesty, the marijuana industry that's taking root in this county. I'm not the big marijuana guy, and I don't believe in the principle of getting stoned out of your brain to deal with life's problems. I think there's a lot of dishonesty. I don't really understand the whole concept of medical marijuana, to be quite honest with you, but I see that government is wrapping its tentacles around this whole industry, figuring out how ways to tax it, get money from it, and it's just very disturbing. This trend is very disturbing. And I don't know, probably there's nothing you guys could even do about it. Or maybe you can, but I just thought that I would bring that up. But I really believe in public comment time after your comments. That would be very helpful.
Thank you.
Well, Mike, I really believe in your comment time. What do you think about that?
I think that there's a reason why they don't want to have a back and forth. They're not interested in a back and forth with people. And listen, you know what? I understand to some degree. If you're one of these people in a position like this, it's going to become difficult if you had to spend hours and hours and hours and hours dealing with people. But this is a Wednesday morning. And listen, clearly, when they schedule a 9 a.m. meeting, it's open-ended. They don't know when that's going to end. So if it took another 15 minutes to a half an hour to have a back and forth, and there has to be some limitation on the back and forth. You can't have it sit there and go for hours and end up in knockdown, drag out arguments. But from what I have heard, this has been done in a relatively orderly fashion in the past, where if somebody mentions your name, you are allowed to come up and rebut for 30 seconds.
30
And,
seconds. 30 seconds. Oh, the chaos. 30 seconds. As Tony Webb pointed out. Well, I collected all those signatures against Sandy Casanelli because the meetings were chaos. They were out of control. No, they weren't. She wasn't there. I was there. Those meetings. And the only reason it happened is because time after time after time, department heads were getting up. Well, that person doesn't know. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Oh, that's totally a lie. And then they're happy. They're smiling. They go sit down. Nobody can say anything.
Yeah.
She put an end to that simply by letting people. It ended forever because people could come up in their 30 seconds and say, that's not true for this and this and this reason. 30 seconds. And she was very tight about that 30 seconds. No more than that. And guess what? The department head stopped doing that. Yeah, because they didn't have their protected time, did they?
Right. And that's, listen, so you can have this back and forth. The idea, and I was about to criticize Stu because later in the meeting, he stood up and said, hey, and it was out of order and everything. But I remember right in my first couple of times that I came there, I did the exact same thing. They were, they were talking about me and I criticized. I said, this is a stupid system. And they told me to shut up. And
you cannot speak.
And I did.
Don't you realize we're the only ones who can speak? We're speaking about you, and we're denigrating you, and we're your public servants. And wait a minute, that doesn't work out very well.
Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? And it was like they totally misinterpreted. And I believe at that particular time that they intentionally misinterpreted what I had said.
Oh well, I'll give you a good example. There was the time I got up and I was talking about these Merlin Fire guys, and Cheryl says, "Well," and so she takes what I said. You guys have heard this. And she paraphrases and she says, well, yeah. Dale Matthews just told you that all firefighters are pedophiles. What?
Yes.
And I'm not allowed to say anything because that's her protected time. Is this what you want?
And that came out of a comment from Cheryl that was, essentially, what if these guys are pedophiles and, we don't have some sort of a system in place to screen them. Hey, isn't it nice? That fire ordinance thing just seems to have evaporated into the ether. It's like gone now. What happened to that?
Well, those guys finally got on. They got on because of this show. They told us it was because of this show. Mike?
Right. Yes, exactly. And so good. So see, we're not good for nothing after all.
Yeah. Okay. So now. Oh, and speaking of civil disobedience, so I mentioned this story I think only once before. So hey, it's only been repeated once. So there I am at a city council meeting a couple of years ago, and David Frazier was still sitting up in front, as you've seen in city council meetings, still sitting up there, even though he had been fired. Oh no, I retired. No, he'd been fired. No, whatever. Anyway, he's been fired again. No, I retired from that one too, and now he's at Arkansas or something. Anyway, he was still sitting up there, even though he was no longer in the position. Why is he sitting there? And Mark Seligman turns to Pam Hackett, and he says, this isn't right. Why is the guy there? And they start, kind of whispering back and forth. And finally, I cringed. I don't like this kind of thing. It makes me very nervous. But he stood up and he said, why is that guy sitting up there? And they were all like, oh, you cannot speak. Well, he shouldn't be sitting there. He's not even with you anymore. He's not even employed here anymore. What is he doing sitting up there? And I was like, ooh, boy, that's really civil disobedience. You know what? I'm not suggesting this to anybody. Don't do this, okay? But the guy got up and he went and sat in the audience and he never sat up there again. And I'm thinking, whoa. That's just from Mark Seligman and Pam Hackett saying the guy shouldn't be, and they were right, he shouldn't be there. They spoke out of turn, they were rude, they were disruptive, but it had an effect.
But they were right, yes.
Yeah. Oh, now what do you do? What lesson are you supposed to learn? Well, don't learn any lessons from this, children.
Yes, in order to be right, I have to be, one of those people.
Well, there were some people who started this country that did that kind of thing. You're shooting at us from behind trees. Why, that's not sporting, old chap. Take this, you. Oh, anyway. So here's Mark Seligman. He always got something to say these days. Mark. Mark.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Mark.
Mark Seligman, Selma, Oregon. I find this a very interesting comments by the audience today. A few compliments. Christine Gardner. I was part of 150 people in the Illinois Valley. A lot of farmers, marijuana farmers and patients who are pretty united in their efforts towards economic development and medical access. Joseph Rice, his ideas about civil liberties I support 100%. One of the previous speakers I have mixed feelings about. Stu, who's
If
not
you move
here.
back, you won't feed. If you
Excuse
just
me?
move back a little bit, I don't
Oh,
think
sorry.
you get the feedback. You're good.
Okay. Regarding rebuttals to commissioners, I might make everyone aware of that. Used to be the policy. When Simon Hare became chairman, he eliminated that rebuttal, so you have to wait till the next week. Unfortunately, Stu is not aware of the many children in the United States who have seizures, and only through marijuana low-level THC can they have any kind of a life. And what about the cancer patients? And what about the glaucoma patients? So maybe he should educate himself on the medical aspects of marijuana. Now, it's interesting, in this election year, the board has finally done something positive towards marijuana with your processing ordinance. We all know full well, if we look back on the history of this board, it has not encouraged this industry. At least today, they've done a good thing. Now, in your protective time, I have a question for you.
Now everybody's using that phrase.
And Commissioner Walker partially answered it in an email I sent her. I want to know about this medical marijuana proposal that came before you in the last week regarding medical marijuana growers who grow for themselves only, to regulate it to indoor or greenhouse. I want to know where this originated from. Was it a commissioner, a private party, the planning commission? And I want to know what each and Cheryl Walker said this isn't going anywhere. Well, that's good. But I want to know how it got started. And each commissioner, I want to know if you supported that or you didn't support that medical marijuana restriction. You know, this is, again, a right to farm, tomatoes, marijuana, same thing, and it's all about economic development. Now, the second half of what I want to talk about is I had an hour discussion with Jay Meredith, who is the SOS guy and the city finance director, and he put a proposal out in the Courier regarding a discussion about how we can combat crime. And SOS and Jay Meredith are part of the pro-tax crowd. Although Jay did come in here and talk about road dollars, and I compliment him, I said to him, I would support their group under one condition only. If you did not talk about taxes and you talked about lowering poverty levels instead. Thank you.
Well, you said a number of things. It's sometimes a little bit hard to categorize what someone has said. They don't need to be categorized, but he mentioned a number of different things. Okay, so one of the things the commissioners have said. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you know what? We all know Mark Seligman has his opinions on marijuana, and that's totally fine. And I think that, most of the rest of what he said, I don't have, in fact, I don't have any problem with anything that he said, but yeah, I mean, listen, regardless what you think of Mark Seligman personally, at least he comes and does this sort of thing and pays attention to what's going on. And, if there was, 1,000 Mark Seligmans in this community, 1,000, imagine that, 1/85th of the population of the county, and these people would not be able to do one damn thing that was out of line with the people. They wouldn't be able to do that. So
now, before anybody says, "Oh no, 1,000 Mark Seligmans," just wait a second. I encourage all kinds of people to speak.
Saying.
No, when somebody new comes in, no matter what they say, even if I hate what they say, dislike what they say, I'm always over there saying, hey, it was great to see you. Glad that you came in and talked. I think that's the right thing to do because we need a plurality of votes, yes, of voices, and not just those three guys up there will come and pay homage to us. Hey, you're just the servants. This is turned around. It's backwards. We need to hear more people. That's why we try to put all kinds of voices on. We've been criticized. Well, how could you put those people who are pro-life on there? Come on. Oh, how could you possibly put those people who are anti-GMO? Come on. Well, why would you put marijuana? Just look, we're hardier than that. We can certainly stand to listen to all kinds of people and what they have to say and give them a shot to say their thing. I don't see why not. But here's something the commissioners have been saying again and again and again. Why we've been pro-marijuana from the beginning. Why you, Mark Seligman, aren't paying attention to what's happening with marijuana. Come on now, if there's anybody that is, it's Mark. And I have no idea what you're talking about, why we've always been supportive of marijuana stuff. So just wait a second. Okay, so here's an article. And this is from the Daily Courier. It was 2 years ago. Listen to this quote and see if this sounds like it's encouraging the growth of an industry. Quote, "It is a land use issue, and our code says we cannot grant anything that violates federal law," Commission Chairwoman Cheryl Walker said. Now, it doesn't matter what the state law is, according to this statement. It doesn't matter what our local vote is. If it violates federal law, she says it is a land use issue, and our code says we cannot grant anything that violates federal law. Here's one from Keith Eck. Here's the quote. "The difficulty is that there are federal laws that do not legitimize marijuana growth," Commissioner Keith Eck said. "If it changes, that becomes something we could discuss. Until it does change, it's a moot point." Now, see, they think that we're not paying attention to the past. We're here to remind you of the past. Here's another one, Simon Hare. "We all agreed that in our planning code, we can't approve something that's against state or federal law," Commissioner Simon Hare says. If somebody argues that Oregon law allows dispensaries, it won't sway the board. In the courts, federal law trumps, Walker said. So I'm asking you.
Okay.
Does that sound like what they're now saying? Oh, we've always been for it. Oh, we're for the local people. Oh, we're for the state. States' rights above all. What kind of Republicans are these? Federal law trumps?
They're not. Listen, I don't know what sort of illusions one might have about Cheryl Walker. She's not a Republican.
No, she is not.
Yeah, she's not a Republican. And if she ever has been a Republican, she hasn't been a Republican for anything else other than the purpose of some political reason, and not based on ideology. That's very, very clear in watching the way that she moves.
But what the other two say? The other two agree with her 100%. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, and I was about to go. Yes, the delay that we have has a little bit of a problem in that there's a perceived pause in me speaking, and then that pause is immediately jumped into. Keith Eck and Simon Hare are marginal at best Republicans. I mean, when you listen, or moderate, I should say. Marginal moderate Republicans. When I hear Simon Hare talking about stuff, we were talking outside. This was right in the middle of the Cheryl Walker recall a couple of years ago or whatever. And we were standing out in front of the Ann Basker talking, and the words that are coming out of his mouth and the things that he says bear no resemblance to the Republican Party ideology that I grew up on and was drawn to. So that just doesn't exist. I don't know of anybody serving that fits into that mold. Anybody serving in this county, be it city or county, that fits into, you know, what my definition of a Republican would be. So
I'm more of a Republican than they are.
Listen. Yeah, well, you know what, and I agree with that. But here's the thing: is that people. I understand, you know, Republicans, Democrats, whatever, having some reluctance to the marijuana issue to begin with. You know, it is against federal law, even now, even still, and the you know, the state constitution sort of indicates, and our charter also seems to indicate that we won't be doing anything that's in violation of state or federal law, and yet we're, you know, Prop 91 is passed and it's the law, and we're doing that sort of thing, and we've decided to not worry about that sort of thing anymore. So I totally understand people that are still cleaving to the idea that, you know, this is against federal law. You know,
because it is.
I understand it. And the thing is, I understand that there are, despite the fact that the Board of Commissioners have not laid down a set of rules about how you can take advantage of, you know, the legality of marijuana. You know, they haven't been openly setting up roadblocks to it either. So, you know, I mean, you're going to get criticized either way on that one. It's like, oh, wait a minute, you know, Prop 91 is passed. Don't worry about the federal government. Let's go ahead and set up a bunch of rules really fast because we have to make sure and cater to these people or we might be criticized. You know, I get where the people on the marijuana side are hypersensitive to that sort of thing.
But don't tell me,
listen,
as they've been
this
doing,
whole thing it's gonna work itself out.
Don't tell me, as they've been doing, because they think that we don't remember our history. This was just when Cheryl was the chair. And don't tell me that you've never said anything against it, or that you were that you've always backed the people and always backed the farmers. Why, we're farmers too, and always backed the you know, the state. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. So, you know, if you want to say, well, we're not doing anything overtly against it, that was overtly against it. We're not going to allow it. We can't allow it. We won't allow it through the most important department of all, being planning.
Yeah.
You won't be allowed to grow there.
Yeah, but you know, the counter to that is that the action that they took on Wednesday was expressly for the purpose of addressing the issue of the criticism that the board has not been supportive of this. They got, you know, we got to throw these guys a bone, and they did.
They did,
and so this.
So they've changed. I'm fine with that.
And so the systems.
Right.
And so the system still works. You know.
Yes. Well, I'd like to think so. Yes. And because do you think it's because of their, they've suddenly seen the light? No, it's because they're getting a lot of pressure. You do have an effect on these guys. You do. Now, also, there's the imaginary effect, because we started off this show talking, we're going to end with something very happy. You'll see. It's going to be nice. You know, it'll be different.
Oh, happy.
Yeah, there's going to be a happy piece of news. It's happy. But we started off with the idea that, you know, that they seem to have this plan for inviting the governor in here to take over. They really would like that, okay? And it won't matter to them. I started off by saying, well, they may think they get to keep their jobs. It won't matter, because they're not going to get to keep their jobs, because we're going to make sure they don't get to keep their jobs, okay? So that part's done, no matter who gets in. Even though, oh, you can see that I've lost that train of thought. Even though they say that they're, and I don't know where that was going. So thank you very much. Okay, so now Don't laugh at
It
me.
was something. It was something about 3453, and this board really being desirous of implementing that against the will of the people, because it would be achieving a goal that they have been unable to achieve by the will of the people. So now the only way to do it is against our will. Does that help you?
Yeah, they can't get there through legitimate means, so they're going to get through there through illegitimate means, and they're not beyond lying about it. And we've seen this time and time again. No, you're too tough on them. Well, what about the Ethics Commission? They have nothing to lose now. Nothing to lose. That's the scariest kind of all. That truly is. That's like going up against, people who strap dynamite to themselves. That's a hyperbole, of course. But the point is that, if they've got
Dale,
nothing to lose. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, where's the happy, joy part of this?
Okay, all right.
We were getting in on some happy thing.
That wasn't it. That wasn't it. Here we go. Okay, so we've got a new parks director. New parks director. Okay, and one would hope that everybody in government service would use common sense. Yeah. How's that working for you so far? Okay, so she comes in. She's talking to the commissioners. And when she was done, I went out in the hallway and I said, that was great. I'm so glad you said these things. It's common sense. She was like, well, yeah. And I said, well, this is a treat for us. We're happy to put out positive news about, well, you're never a positive. We try to be, but where are we finding this? Here you go. Here's proof positive. Here you go.
Put on the reservations. It's not going to have any credit charge anymore, which I think is but
what?
People can still make. What do they just give you your card number and it's not run until they show up, or how does that work?
You're talking about.
It says on the credit card will no longer be charged a refund of reservation deposit.
Yeah. So what's happening with that is this is somewhere that I realized you can save a lot of money. What's happening right now is if you rent a park shelter, let's say Congress Park, we require you to put either a $100 or $200 deposit down on that to ensure that you clean it before you leave. Right now, we are either charging your credit card today as you make the booking and refunding it after you leave, or we're taking a check. The majority of them are coming in on credit card because people like to pay with credit card.
Now, Mike, I didn't set that up really well because I was excited about the happy news. You understand what they're talking about? Does everybody understand what they're talking about? People are making reservations.
Yeah, and it doesn't really.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah,
People are making
and use.
Sorry.
And using their credit cards to make that reservation. And then, of course, just like when you go to a gas station, many cases, they charge your card for like $75, even if you get $10 worth of gas. Is this kind of the gist that I'm hearing?
Yes, and so people are making the reservation. Let her. She does a good job of explaining, even though Keith kind of backed into it, and I didn't understand what he was saying. Even though I've listened to it several times, she's doing a good job of explaining why. And it's been the policy for a long time, buddy, but it doesn't make any dang sense. I'm going to give it back to her. Here she goes.
What that did for me was I had a 6% transaction fee up front, and then when I did the refund, I had an additional 6% transaction fee. And I wasn't actually in the revenue, and so I would often be paying $12, sometimes $24 if it was a $200 deposit out of pocket to take your money and refund it to you. And so what I've done instead is created a credit card authorization form so that if you want to pay by credit card, we're getting your authorization to charge after your reservation. If you don't clean it, we're just not actually charging you at this time. So we hope to not charge people to give them refunds on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And reducing that 6.5.
Yeah.
2.5.
It's 2.45.
2.45. That's great.
Yeah. We also got rid of solid transaction fees and batch fees that they were charging us. So essentially, we've cut out quite a bit of cost just with credit cards.
That's great.
Now, Simon is saying, great. He is the liaison to parks. Not the slightest idea that any of this was happening. That was costing us money to take in the credit card, 6%, and to return the credit card money because they didn't need it, 6%. It was costing us money. And the reason for the thing in the first place was to make sure that you clean up after yourselves. Well, that's been happening. Okay. And if they just had the authorization form, then we don't have to pay 6% in and 6% out, coming out of pocket. He is the liaison and not a single idea we're talking about.
Well, and of course you realize why this is. Because it's not a private organization doing the business. Private organization actually cares about profit and cares about how much is left after expenses. Government doesn't care about that. It doesn't matter to them. It's like, it's an afterthought if it's even considered at all. And this is generally speaking why government can't really do anything correctly. Show me when they do something correctly, and I'll give you a big medal. I just got in an argument today on Facebook. Imagine that about whether or not we're getting a good deal on our education dollars that we're spending. And it's very, very clear. I mean, you don't need a college degree to understand that, that we aren't getting a good deal. As a matter of fact, I just saw some episode of Water's World. This guy, man on the street guy, goes out and he was talking to kids at the University of Oregon who supported Bernie Sanders, but didn't have any idea why. And it just speaks to the level of education, and that, there was probably a time not all that long ago where people would not accept an idea unless you convince them logically of it. But now you can just implant an idea because, hey, ride the wave. It's this guy or whatever. It doesn't have to be Bernie Sanders. I'm not trying to, come down on Bernie Sanders. I'm just saying there was a time that people thought critically, and they don't do that generally anymore, especially in the younger set who's had a bad education. And where I was going with that is that this is no surprise that this, existed under his nose, where they're losing 12% of a transaction to, fees going back and forth because he's not paying attention. Whereas, some vendor who is using one of these little, smartphone credit card readers,
or an abacus,
what his cost is. Right. Yes, of course. But they know what their cost is for the use of that service. And, typically it's like 2.5% or something like that for one of these services. That's what you're losing every time you have a price. You take cash, you're getting 2.5% more when you're taking cash than you do when you're taking a card. But, you want to be able to give that option to people because a lot of people don't even use cash anymore.
Well, you see how hard we look. We see how hard we look for good news. Okay, I went out and talked to her in the hallway as the thing continued, and I left the camera in there. It fell over and it burst into flames, and all the commissioners are now gone. But great footage though. So I went out in the hallway to talk to her, and I said this, and she says, "Well, yeah, I was an economics major." Look. A common sense person, the guy I grabbed out of that audience, would you have done? No, I wouldn't have done that. Well, you're qualified to be a parks director. I mean, it is common sense, but you're right. It's not their money. Why would they care? Why would it even occur to them? I mean, they're looking at her. You saw, they're looking at her like, oh, well, huh, yeah. Oh, 15 years have gone by and we haven't gathered any of that money from the state. Oh, well, yeah, that's an interesting idea. Maybe we should ask for the money that they owe us. You think? Or we hand out grants to people. Where are those jobs you created from a plaque on a rock? Or have you returned any of the money that you borrowed? Have they? Well, we don't know. As the previous finance director said, I was instructed not to follow through on the loans. Not to follow through? You were instructed not to follow through? First of all, what kind of self-respecting finance director would take that action? Second, they did not tell her this in open session. You think I'd just sit there going, oh, well, they're instructed not to follow. You think I would? Would you? That's you need somebody in there that can listen to this and go, what? What? and doesn't have to keep quiet about it. No, don't do it like that. What, are you crazy?
Well,
Maybe a bit more diplomatic.
and whereas this is a little piece of good news, it should make you wonder, what else are they missing because they don't care? You know, and I imagine quite a bit.
Oh, I knew you'd take something positive and make it into some negative, you two guys. I mean, that was real positive. Why can't you just lead with that? Put that on goodcounty.com. Well, we have goodcounty.com, and I can certainly put that there, but it's going to be sort of lonely.